Hello, everyone. Thanks for rejoining us. I'm here with my main man, Todd Cohen. We're super excited to have Amy Chozick here, who is the New York Times award-winning, best-selling author of 10 Years, 2 Presidential Campaigns, 1 Intact Glass Ceiling, Chasing Hillary. And Amy, I believe, knows the Hillary Clinton campaigns for the past 10 years better than anyone else. I think she's had a front row seat. And Amy, I'm really excited you're here with us today. I know how super busy you are. And first, I want to thank you.
Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you.
I'm excited. I read this book from cover to cover this weekend. I literally couldn't put it down.
I love that.
It's the truth. Anyone who's a political junkie has to go out to Amazon or wherever you're getting the book and get it instantly. Amy, the way I look at this, it's almost 2 stories. One is you strike me as an extreme hustler. A girl, first of all, who came from San Antonio, Texas. I love it. You started out really not on the Hillary Clinton plane, and you fought your way there. Maybe give us a little bit of background for a minute or two on how you ended up as like the most predominant, reporter on Clinton in the world.
Yeah, it was, as you point out, I just kind of fell into it. I moved to New York from Texas with no job, no apartment, a stack of clips from the Daily Texan, and just started I guess, as you said, hustling. I was dropping my stacks of clips off at the publications I wanted to work at. At one point, a very kind security guard at the New York Times escorted me out of the building. No loitering downstairs. And I struggled a lot. I had a lot of jobs as a temp and was kind of fetching coffee for people. And so it was, totally unexpected and appreciated when I found myself covering potentially the first woman president for the paper of record. But I wanted to give readers, I think there's so much a sense of the kind of elite media that from the East Coast and Ivy League educated, out of touch. And I just wanted to give readers a backstory of how hard it was for me to get my foot in the door and, how much I appreciated it once I was there.
So I want to start off by giving everyone a little background on the book. And I don't want to give too much away because I want people to buy the book. But it struck me as an extremely salty book. You use a lot of F words and profanities. And I think it was someone who said that Amy looks sweet and cuddly, but inside she's a blank killer.
Well, my mentor, who passed away right before the campaign started, David Carr, was the media columnist at the New York Times, and he really was, my person that gave me the advice. And yeah, at one point we were chasing down a big story, and I ended up getting this CEO to say something that we were trying to get out of him, but he was lying about, and I finally got him to say it. And David said, "Oh, you're like a polar bear. You look all sweet and cuddly, but really you're a effing killer." And so he started calling me the polar bear. And so after he passed away, I would just try to remember his, encouragement of my reporting. And I'm still known as the polar bear in my household.
Not the effing killer.
No, I'm sweet and cuddly. What are you talking about?
A polar bear is a dangerous animal, though, so yeah.
I got it. So, Amy, let me just start throwing things out there and tell me what you think of them. So, somehow you wind up covering Clinton for 10 years or so, but through this campaign, it seems like Clinton's not a huge fan of yours, and the Trump camp's not a huge fan of yours. How did you end up kind of alienating both sides? And really, is that a reporter's job to do that?
Right. No, absolutely. And actually, I don't know if the Trump camp disliked me. I didn't really hear that from them. I mean, certainly their Trump supporters would have thought the New York Times was pro-Hillary, and Hillary supporters obviously think the New York Times was out to get her. So we were kind of doing our jobs and making both sides mad. But to your point, it doesn't necessarily feel great when you're in the middle of it, when you're getting for me, what stood out more than the Trump camp was the Bernie. I write a lot about the Bernie bros and Bernie Sanders supporters, really being hard. Like, even as the Hillary campaign was mad at me and disliked my coverage, the Bernie people were screaming at me that I was, anointing her and discounting Bernie. So it was just a lot of negativity on all sides. You're right.
Right. You're glancing over that a little bit. I actually read that you received death threats from that camp, or at least from the followers. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, so if you remember, the media declared Hillary had reached the number of delegates to become the Democratic nominee before several states had voted, before California, New Jersey, and a few other states had voted. And Bernie Sanders supporters, that enraged them. They felt like the media was declaring her the nominee before people could vote, and that was a period when myself, and a lot of female journalists who covered Hillary got death threats. I mean, to be honest, I didn't feel threatened necessarily. It was very much like voicemails and things like that. But still, it was not a pleasant thing to go through.
Sure.
Doesn't sound like it. One of the things you talked about in the book, which I think a lot of people will be surprised at, is Hillary Clinton seemed to flirt with some male reporters. And I guess I was surprised by that, but I guess how does that jive with the Me Too movement? And is it sort of like a reverse double standard when she's such a feminist, but yet she's using her female persuasion to flirt, maybe get a little bit better coverage from the male reporters?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't necessarily see it as trying to get more favorable coverage. I just think one of the kind of personality traits of Hillary that people don't know is that she really likes handsome men. She was always talking about how she married a man who's more handsome than, who's handsome, and she was kind of flirty with the guys on the bus. And so I saw it less about trying to influence coverage and more because it's a perfect example. One of the guys she used to really like kind of bantering with was Ed Henry of Fox News, and he was constantly yelling at her about her emails. I don't think anyone covered her tougher than Ed did, but she still had kind of fun banter with him. So that was more of like I want readers to read this book and come away feeling like they know parts of Hillary that maybe they didn't. And I think that was one of the things that stood out to me, seeing her in these different settings.
So on that topic, I think there was one point you talk in the book that Bill and Hillary were cuddling. I don't remember if it was on the plane or one point. But did you experience I don't want to say outward romance, or what is it called, PDA, between Bill and Hillary?
Yeah, I know that cynics will not believe me, but I did see them kind of cuddling on the plane. That was the night before the election when Hillary was incredibly happy and she thought she was going to be president, and Bon Jovi was flying around with us and they were popping champagne at the front of the plane. And yeah, I write in the book, the cynics won't believe me, but they weren't there. They were very affectionate.
So only because we're very immature on this show, do you think Bill and Hillary, or President, Madam Secretary, have a normal male-female married couple relationship for someone of their age?
I mean, look, I don't pretend to get inside someone's marriage. From what I saw, they genuinely have certainly an intellectual connection, certainly care about each other a lot. I saw him send her roses on Valentine's when they were apart. And she's always seems, kind of excited to talk about him and banter about him. So that's what I saw. But again, I can't pretend to get inside someone's marriage.
It's just the immaturity in me who wants to know that.
That's right.
That's really good.
I know you. I guess you were asked some questions and gave your insight into the House of Cards and that relationship with the Underwoods. Yep. Are the Clintons, I know they're loosely based, maybe not loosely based, maybe very much based on the Underwoods. The Underwoods were portrayed as having like a creepy, romantic relationship. Is that your feeling about the Clintons at all, or is it different?
Well, I actually have talked a lot about Beau Willimon, who was the creator of House of Cards, the U.S. version, and that marriage wasn't really based on the Clintons. I mean, that was kind of a popular perception because he was Southern and she was very ambitious, but he had the Roosevelts in mind and a lot of other kind of political alliances in mind when he created that marriage. I mean, look, I think that, I didn't see a lot of Hillary in the Underwoods. I mean, for one, I don't think that Frank Underwood was Bill Clintonian. I didn't see that kind of Clinton gift of retail politics. And I also think one of the things I write about in the book that I think people don't know about Hillary is how religious she is. She's a very devout Methodist. I saw her reading the Bible on the campaign plane. We went to church almost every Sunday. And so, yeah, I think that's one aspect when people are trying to get their head around their marriage that they don't necessarily understand, is that she is incredibly religious. And I think, I think marriage is important to her.
If I have another question on Bill Clinton, then I want to talk about Hillary. If Bill
Sure.
would have run, Bill would have run the campaign? Do you think it would have had a different outcome? Because I know at one point you comment, I think it was Paul Begala, but one of the Clinton higher ups kind of dismissed some of Bill Clinton's advice, and it seemed that advice was spot on. And I'm just curious from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that there was a generational divide in Hillary's world in her campaign. And Bill Clinton was arguing that they need to reach out to the white working class, the Panhandle, Ohio, Wisconsin, places that he won in 92 and 96. And then there was a younger generation that said, no, we've crunched the numbers and we need to reach, Latinos and Obama's Black supporters and young supporters. And so there was that kind of strategic tension, but there was also a bigger argument about Hillary's campaign had amazing data and analytics, and they had this organization where they could target anyone they wanted. And Bill Clinton argued that, well, what's the point of having this amazing organization if people don't like Hillary? He argued that building up enthusiasm and getting people to actually like her, which she has struggled with, was more important than the organization. So you did have this generational tension. And I honestly, I can't say whether she would have won if she would have listened to him more, because other parts of his, ideas about campaigning are pretty frozen in amber in the 90s and probably wouldn't have translated as well to current times. But certainly there were things that in hindsight she probably should have followed his advice a little more.
Jumping topics here, do you believe that Roger Stone, only because you talk about him in the book, is a good political operative?
I don't really know Roger well enough to determine that. I read his book. But I quoted him in a couple of stories. But yeah, I haven't spent a lot of time to make that.
What did you think of the Donna Brazile? I don't want to say fiasco, or the whole Donna Brazile situation.
You mean during the campaign?
Yes, yeah, and with the DNC and how that all was handled.
Yeah, I mean, I think the DNC didn't do itself a lot of favors during the campaign, mostly just kind of adding to this animosity of the left, the Bernie wing of the party, that the establishment was silencing them. And I think, some of that was amplified by conservative media, not necessarily entirely rooted in fact in terms of the debate questions. And but I do think that we're still seeing that tension, and the Bernie wing in the midterms being very active in the Democratic the party trying to kind of figure out how to wrestle with it, because the party is still, I think, more in the kind of centrist Bill Clinton mold, Obama mold.
Was Debbie Wasserman Schultz railroaded, or was she actually was she railroaded, or was she actually culpable?
I have sort of sympathy for Debbie. I think she was, I'm sure not blameless, but also shouldn't have bared the brunt of the. I think she got an inordinate amount of hate and venom cast her way.
Got it. And given the news that just came out, I guess a day or two ago, what's your feeling about the rescinding of the Iran deal, and B, what is Hillary's feeling about it based on your research and time with her?
Well, I haven't spoken to anyone in her world since Trump said he would get out of the deal. I mean, I know that this was really a signature of her State Department tenure that she was very proud of. Of course, it came together when John Kerry was at the State Department, but she made very clear that she had laid the table. I think the way she put it was, by the time the Iranians were ready to come to the table with John Kerry, I had set the table. So this was something she was very proud of, and I'm sure that she and most of the Obama administration are incredibly frustrated right now and concerned.
What about you?
What about me personally?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to I don't really have an opinion to say. I'm a journalist, so
Got it.
I think there's plenty of opinion columnists out there who can weigh in.
On that topic, were there any blatant journalists who covered Hillary Clinton who were pro-Trump, who were kind of out there as pro-Trump, who covered Hillary Clinton? Or did people keep their feelings kind of suppressed?
I'm sorry?
Did people keep their political biases suppressed, or were there pro-Trump journalists who covered Hillary?
I mean, I can't speak to like what my colleagues did inside the voting booth.
But what about the gossip on the plane?
The press on the plane? I mean, it's not like we sat on the back of the plane and said, hey, who are you voting for? I mean,
Gotcha. So I have to ask you some of the salacious details in the book that you talk about, and not the whole book, but a little bit, and I pick up on it because I'm immature, is there's an expression, I think it's called wheels up, rings off. Maybe give us a little detail on exactly what that means.
Yeah, that's something that I wrote about. And when I worked at the Wall Street Journal, I wrote a story about campaign hookups. And the Secret Service guys who travel around with the press and staff and candidates had a saying of their rings off, wheels up. So when the wheels up, rings off. Sorry, when the campaign plane takes off, they take their ring off. I mean, I'm not saying all Secret Service guys do this, obviously, but there has been a tradition of hooking up, and yeah, I wrote about that.
So it's like
a Wall Street Journal story.
It's like a big college party when they're on the.
Yeah, camp. I mean, there's been actually a lot of like marriages that have come out of it. A correspondent for People magazine ended up marrying a Secret Service guy in Dick Cheney's Detail, and there was a great story where they were at the Christmas party, in the receiving line to greet the vice president. And she says, she said, "Oh, thank you, Mr. Vice President. I met my husband covering your, the campaign. He was in your Secret Service detail." And Dick Cheney said, "Well, that's not what they're supposed to be doing." Which was very Dick Cheney of him.
So was it just the Secret? I don't want to say just, but was it mainly the Secret Service and the reporters?
No, there's a lot of
Just everyone.
There's a lot of hooking up, and not a lot of like among there were a lot of couples in the Hillary's campaign. One of them is now engaged. Journalist couples. Campaign staffers meet each other. It's just kind of like a thing that this travel happens in this traveling roadshow. If you think about it, you're logging long hours together. You're usually like-minded, the candidate staff, and so I think it makes sense.
So has your husband put any restrictions on you? Because I know I would definitely never let my wife be a journalist travel. That's out of the question.
That's funny. No, my husband is incredibly confident and very trusting. So no, actually.
Tell him to talk to me. Believe me, you won't be going anywhere. I wouldn't let you leave your apartment.
That's funny.
So what do you think of, you've seen the whole campaign and the polarization of the country. It's just terrible. Yeah. You go on Facebook and it just, friends are fighting and people are coming apart in the families. What do you think of the whole thing from your perspective? And what can we do as a society and a country to, I don't want to say take it down the notch, but to agree to disagree on certain issues and be civil about it?
I mean, I wish I had a diagnosis for that, but I think that Twitter really exacerbates these problems. People feel like they can just follow people who reinforce their own biases. I mean, I think it kind of starts with all of us reading a different side, or watching, if you're a MSNBC junkie, switch to Fox News occasionally, just so that you can hear the other side, because I think we do create these silos where we're only hearing news that reinforces our own biases, and that's a dangerous thing.
Obviously, there was a big backlash in America. People are frustrated. I believe people are frustrated, which is one of the reasons that Clinton lost. Do you believe...
I'm sorry, I can't hear you because other people are talking.
I'm sorry, I don't know who's talking, but I apologize. I said one of the things, I think there was a big backlash in America over the current political system, and people are just frustrated on the ground level. And do you think the Clinton campaign gets the pain that the average Americans feel? In other words, because I've read through the book and I've read a lot of things, and why Clinton lost, but it doesn't seem that I hear too much that, hey, people are hurting out there in Maine, Middletown, USA. People are in pain. And do you think they get that now?
I mean, I think after the fact, Hillary said that she was surprised at the level of anger in the country over income inequality. But I think I do write about this because when she was first deciding whether to run, her advisors told her that people didn't like to be called middle class anymore, that it didn't connote, a comfortable lifestyle. And I think that was such a that should have been a really fundamental sign that there was something stirring in America for people to not want to be called middle class anymore. And instead of kind of realizing that must mean there's something different going on in this election year, the campaign kind of tested a lot of different things to call these people. Like, let's call them everyday Americans, or let's call them this or that. And it really wasn't a semantic problem. It was a problem that, people are feeling so financially insecure and so strapped in the current economy that they no longer want to be called what has always been sort of the pinnacle of aspiration in America. So I think there were signs all along that she kind of misinterpreted underestimated the anger.
Do you think it's just income that divides us, or are there? Because I think, to be candid with you, at least the people I speak to, it's more than income. It's just a big social. It's just everyone's stressed out over a million different things, and that's a whole different show. But it seems to me that the Clinton camp, even now, doesn't get it. They're blaming this one and they're blaming that, but they're not saying, "Hey, we just didn't get it." Right.
I think you lose an election for 1,000 reasons. Part of it was that they didn't get it all the time, but there's, I do think other outside forces, the Comey letter, Russia, a lot of strategic errors in terms of where to spend their time. I mean, there were like 1,000 reasons, but I write about this, that Hillary Clinton had been Secretary of State for the 4 years when we had Occupy Wall Street, we had bank bailouts, we had a lot of anger over Obamacare, and real anger that the growing economy was only benefiting those at the top. I think she missed a lot of those domestic storms that were happening while she was dealing with foreign affairs. And then she came back to this pretty rarefied world in Chappaqua and New York and the Hamptons. And I do think she was like a little detached, certainly more detached than she was when she was a New York senator and she ran in 2008 and she won in places like Indiana and Ohio and Pennsylvania, and she was very connected to voters because she had been a New York senator talking to factory workers and farmers.
Was it a little bit of the tortoise versus the hare kind of fable in this, where, I mean, once Trump emerged as her opponent, it was almost laughable, and she's like, there's no way I'm losing now. I got this in the bag, and sort of rested on her laurels as well?
I don't know if she ever fully thought she had it in the bag, but I definitely think there was a level of confidence, certainly, and against Trump. I mean, and you saw that in decisions to go to Arizona, and the campaign said they're going to expand the map, beyond where Democrats usually win. And they were spending money on down ballot races. Hillary was in Florida talking about sending Patrick Murphy to the Senate. So when a presidential candidate is spending time and resources on getting a Democrat in the House and Senate, they were very confident.
Amy says in the book, I think it's in the book somewhere, that the day of the election, or right before the balloting closing, Chelsea was drinking champagne. Right. So it seems, at least, am I correct, Amy, that they were ultra confident?
Well, we saw them the night before this was basically the morning of the election, like 3 a.m, when we were still just getting off this big campaign swing. There was champagne going around the front of the cabin, and she definitely thought she was going. They all thought she was going to win, and in fairness, Trump thought he was going to lose. So a lot of people were
A lot of people were wrong.
were surprised that night. And hey, I've loved talking to you, but I've got to run because
Amy,
I have a baby in the other room.
I thank you for your time, Amy.
10-week-old baby.
Congratulations on the baby. And just one quick question.
Yeah.
Is it true that you hold the record for the most Marriott points as anyone in the country? Because that's what I've heard from Marriott.
That's funny. I'm probably up there. Avis points and Marriott points. I'm probably up there. Yeah.
I feel like we're so immature. We have to ask you one question about another article we just read that you wrote. You wrote something about the hymen rejuvenation surgery. And,
that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great article, and
thanks.
We're just curious if you could take like 1 minute to just talk about, I guess, I don't know if you did this kind of research, but do the women who get it, do they actually feel like they're losing their virginity a second time or a third time or whatever it is, and is it different, and is it, I mean, what's the whole...
I can only say that it is not unpainful. It is not it is not without pain.
Right.
Yes. But
Amy, what can I tell you? We'll close it out at that. I couldn't think of anything
I mean,
more.
how can we end this any other way?
Congratulations!
I think we should end it there. Thank you so much.
Congratulations on the baby, and tell your husband to call me. I'll set him straight.
Thank you,
Thank
Amy.
you,
Thanks
Amy.
a lot. Take care.
Have a great
Bye.
day.